Hello everyone, and this is my review for WWE Payback 2017. And what can I say about this one? This pay-per-view, I felt it wasn't of high quality. It had good matches on it. Let's not get this wrong. And I won't say any of the matches themselves were really bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think it did lack a certain area of quality towards it in the terms of the pay-per-view. And I will talk about the House of Horrors match when we get to it, because that was about five matches in or so. But overall, I wasn't really angry with the pay-per-view. I felt like it wasn't. You can't even say it was an extended edition of Raw, because Raw goes over 3 hours. This pay-per-view didn't even go the 3 hours in any way. It actually went under. It was one of those few times that the Raw pay-per-views went under the 3 hour mark for their actual show. And but in a sense, it did feel like a somewhat of edition of Raw in its own way, with maybe a little bit a little bit heightened variations of the matches themselves to go along with it. So let's just start off at the beginning of the show. We'll go with the pre-show. By the way, my predictions were absolutely horrendous this time. I actually went under the 50% mark for the first time in a long time in the terms of getting predictions right. So that went bad. So my goal is to either get them all right at one point, and by not following the betting odds, and or have an O for night. Not gonna try for an O for night, but I feel like it would be better if I just got them all wrong instead of going under 50%. It would just come off as even better in that sense of it. But predictions were pretty bad tonight. I think I was three out of the 8 matches to go along with it in the terms of prediction side. But yeah, I'll have to try to do better on that side of it. So, but like I said, we'll start with the pre-show in the sense we'll start with the first match, which was Gallows and Anderson versus Enzo and Cass. And lo and behold, 50-50 booking. 50-50 booking happened. Now, don't get me wrong, this match ended somewhat differently than the typical Enzo and Cass match. It kind of started off the same way, and like Enzo gets beaten down, kind of what you typically see. He tags in Big Cass, he runs wild. Eventually, Enzo tags back in, which you would kind of go for them getting a loss out of nowhere or something in that sense. Or they go for that big splash off the top rope. But instead, Enzo gets knocked out to the outside. And eventually it also looked like Gallows and Anderson are about to win with Magic Killer, and then Big Cass knocks out Luke Gallows, and then also which allows Enzo, he doesn't actually hit Carl Anderson, but which allows Enzo to roll up Carl Anderson to get the victory. So a somewhat of a different finish than what they typically do, but the typical match that you usually see from them. I'm not saying it was bad by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying it was what you kind of usually see from these guys in every way. And their promo beforehand is kind of a, I won't say interesting one, maybe a little bit jumping the shark a little bit with the Enzo and Cass thing, because they're really going off more on just food side again. And this time they were going on, they were spewing off Chinese food portions to their promo to go along with it. But I did like the going to the spelling off of soft for Cass on there, saying that it was going to be that the fortune cookie was only going to have one word to describe you. I like that. That was good. So there's like some good stuff to that as well. I'm not completely over their shtick, but in certain cases it just doesn't come off as well. Here was one of them. Up next, they had Finn Balor and The Miz having a Miz TV segment. I actually like this one, because you had Miz, and Miz is like on this area of pseudo shoot, but keeping kayfabe. Like he's slowly becoming the true Deadpool of the WWE. just in heel form. With everything, because the first thing he goes about is like he's just sitting there looking at his watch and kind of like I'm just sitting here almost not amused by what I'm seeing, and then he looks at his watch and it's like, that was a 5-minute entrance. I don't have time for a 5-minute entrance. As the crowd's going nuts, and it's like, do you find that good? It's like, and I was just going like, yeah, I do. I actually liked this one. I did like this one. Going up till the end of it, they played up the whole aspect of Balor Club and them not being able to get in there and everything in that sense. Like, it's your kind of typical promo, and I don't know if they're going to be going with this particular feud going down the line, because it makes you feel like they might be working with Miz and Finn Balor at some point. If not that being the next thing, because there could be changes to the storylines, because if you feel like that Bray Wyatt's probably going to go after Dean Ambrose in some way, especially after Monday, and so that kind of changes up that he might not be going after Finn Balor, and maybe they're going to have Finn going up against The Miz or something like that to go along with everything. So we'll see how everything plays out there. The segment ended with kind of the typical fare. Finn Balor gets in the face of The Miz. Miz puts Maurice in the way. And then I like the line that Finn Balor throws out there. It's like, every Miz TV ends the same way, with you getting your ass kicked. You know what? You're not even worth it. And he goes to leave. Miz challenges Finn's manhood to go along with it. Other things that they talked about was like, before fully going into that, other things they talked about though was Finn says, I want my Universal title back. And I love the aspect of Miz going, it's like, aren't you, like, you do know who the champion is. He's that much bigger and everything, in a sense. I like Finn's response, like, dude, facing bigger guys all the time doesn't matter. In this sense, so almost playing it off that he's not really afraid of Brock Lesnar to go along with it. But like I said, typical fare kind of with the ending of this segment where Finn goes to leave. He says like, okay, you're not even worth it. I'm gonna play the bigger man. Not gonna be worth it. And of course, Miz gives the one thing in WWE that usually means you're gonna get beaten up a little bit. He challenges Finn's manhood. He gets beaten up for it. So typical fare in that sense. Otherwise, a rather enjoyable segment. So on to the main card and on to the main show itself. The pay-per-view started with, the first 4 matches were all 4 title matches, and then the other matches afterwards were all the grudge matches to go along with it. So all 4 title matches went on first. So you had Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho. This was a good match. It was a good match. It wasn't to the great levels that I could kind of expect from these guys, or at least feel like they could go with. I like the homage later in the match when you have Jericho and the Walls of Jericho, or not Jericho and the Walls of Jericho. You had Owens and the Walls of Jericho, and he played an homage to what happened at WrestleMania by getting one finger on the rope. And I love the aspect of Chris Jericho just going nuts about it, that he did it again, and he starts destroying the hand and the finger and everything in that sense. Corey Graves gives off a great one-liner that made me and my roommate, who was watching the show at the same time, just bust out laughing, saying that Jericho is trying to destroy the new finger of America. Oh my God. It was a great line, but they even play off of that aspect, going to the finish of the match where Owens wanted to go for the pop-up powerbomb, couldn't do it because of the hand, and he couldn't go for the rope as much as he wanted to because of the hand, and made him forced to tap out to the Walls of Jericho, and Jericho wins the U.S. title. Nice curveball. They threw a curveball on that one, even if it's going to be for a couple days, which could be the case, because Jericho's going over the SmackDown on this side of everything now with it. And I think they had a video of where they were where Kurt Angle was talking with Jericho about having to go to SmackDown now, and they were saying goodbyes, and you had both Mike and Tom Phillips show up to do interviews to confuse Jericho, and then he puts them both on the list. That was good stuff on there to go along with it. But they threw a curveball, and they gave Jericho the U.S. title tonight. Most people were kind of, and maybe because it was their aspect of telegraphing it as much as they had, maybe it was that one thing is like, hey, let's throw a nice little curveball at them just to prove them wrong or something like that. I don't know. The match was fine. It was good. And if it is even for a couple days, it should be fine to go along with it. So we'll see what they do with SmackDown. You would assume Kevin Owens is going to get a rematch on SmackDown, because Jericho's supposed to be going on tour with Fozzy, and you would assume it'd be gone for a little while. So whether they give him the title back, give the title back to Kevin Owens on SmackDown, or they have a big beatdown or something like that on SmackDown itself, we'll see what ends up happening with everything on this one to go along with it. Because you know that, like, the way they've been building up SmackDown has been with Kevin Owens and AJ Styles, and now to just switch it straight over to Jericho would probably come off as a little weird at this point in time. Up next, though, was Neville going up against Austin Aries. Another good match from them. It was a rather enjoyable match. I personally enjoyed the match that was going on inside the ring, and it came off really well. Just like the WrestleMania match came off really well. You don't get too many high flying spots and everything in that sense. It's not like, oh, let's do one high spot then another high spot. And I'm okay with lesser high spots with the storytelling that they go in there, and even allowing the cruiserweights to do what they typically do in the terms of high flying and everything, but they tell it in more of a story based side of everything is where I would not mind it being, but I wouldn't mind seeing like some more of the high flying stuff a little bit, as long as they keep it within the context of the storytelling, which they do in this match. You got some stuff from Neville. You got, of course, your typical fare from Austin Aries as well. The finish of the match came with Austin Aries having Neville in the last chancery again, and instead of going for the eye socket like he did before, this just makes you feel like that they're going to keep on the feud with the two of them. Matter of fact, you kind of get that feeling with a couple matches that they did these finishes with the aspect of keeping the feud going. And you had Neville grabbing for the referee. I like how the referee knocks his hand away, and then Neville eventually just grabs for the referee again as he's going for the ropes, and then chucks the referee over top of him, which caused the disqualification. Not big fan of how they did the disqualification on this one, but all in all, it keeps the feud going, and if they're putting on good matches like they've been doing, I'm okay with it in that sense of everything. But I was not a big fan of, the referee gets shoved once, DQ, and he raced to get the title too. It was one of those bits that he's like, oh, I need to get the title over to Neville because he's still keeping it. So he actually races over to them and is like, give him the belt. It was a little bit too much in the sense of everything to go along with it. It was one of those things, I guess, to fully explain it. Why would the referee rush to get him his belt after he just threw him and caused the disqualification? And then he races right over there and grabs the title. Not a very good ending to what was a pretty good match. On this one. Up next was the Hardys going up against Sheamus and Cesaro, and you know what? Lo and behold, they did go with that route, and this is one of the few matches I got right tonight. Was the Hardys winning, but they also decided to do a little bit of a different side of everything. They decided to turn Sheamus and Cesaro heel to go along with it. So throughout the match, you got some hard, like, stiff shots throughout the match. In there, the shot to Jeff Hardy's face that knocked out his tooth, like Jeff Hardy lost a tooth in the match, and then Matt Hardy got busted open somewhere in the match. I couldn't see where, but you could definitely tell he was bleeding and everything. So this was a little bit of a hard-hitting match. Came off rather well. I did enjoy the match. The ending came with Sheamus looking like he had a pin on Matt Hardy, but he wasn't the legal man, and Jeff hit him with a Swanton Bomb, which allowed for him to get the victory, which brings it to that finish point where it's like, oh, they're going to be nice and cordial again. And they even make it where Cesaro and Sheamus leave. It's like, oh, so they're not going to do anything. And the Hardys go to celebrate. And then Cesaro just comes back into frame and just chucks Jeff Hardy off the top rope. And then Sheamus lays out Matt Hardy, but them both getting laid out in there. Good beatdown after the match. And a sufficient way of turning the Cesaro and Sheamus heel. I didn't know if they necessarily wanted to do it with how over at times Cesaro's been, but they're gonna go for it, and this will obviously probably keep this feud going on for a little bit longer. So we'll see how everything plays out on that one. So you have a nice little new heel tag team. Good way of going, having them be heel if you're not gonna have Gallows and Anderson be those strong heels on the tag team division. Then you got to have strong heels, and they're going to be strong heels to go along with it. So, this brings us to the Raw Women's title match, which was Bayley and Alexa Bliss. Now, here's the one thing. They treated this as the big title match of the night because out of all the other title matches, none of them got like that intro. Where the announcers wait for them to get to the ring, they both stand in the ring, then they get announced, everything in that sense. So they treated this as the big title match. Bayley got pretty much the biggest pop of the night because it is her hometown to go along with it, and lo and behold, you know what? For predictions, I should have just gone with it. And don't get me wrong, I was absolutely okay with the match. I thought the match came off rather well. Both of them worked well together too. It didn't seem like they were stumbling around too much or anything to go along with it in there. But it's that, lo and behold, you're in your hometown, you're gonna job out and lose that title tonight. And I did like the way that they came up with it as well. To actually have Bayley lose in the end to go along with it, and it's not one of those things. It's not one of those things that you feel like, okay, she just lost. It made it come off as an opportunity came up because when Bayley was in, Bayley had a roll up after a counter. And then Alexa Bliss kicks out, and it shoves Bayley right into the ring post, making it play off of earlier where, Alexa Bliss had been going for the head a lot, and knocks Bayley loopy, eventually leading to Bayley trying to have to find a way to fight. She gets like a roll-up, but then gets countered into a DDT to lose. The only downside to this match, you had Bayley with such a big pop that night. They should have totally turned Sasha tonight. They should have had Sasha come out and cost Bayley the match, because that would have been a perfect way to get heel heat on Sasha Banks for turning on Bayley in her hometown and everything to play off of that. They could have just played off of all that to go along with it. But they decided not to, which makes me kind of hope they hold off for like another couple of months on that, because... let's face it there, like, this was a perfect opportunity. Don't do it like 2 weeks later when you had the perfect opportunity right here to turn Sasha Banks heel. But they do have Alexa Bliss go over clean, and she ends up becoming the first person to win the Raw and SmackDown women's titles. They decided not to give that accolade to Charlotte. They gave it to Alexa Bliss. And what I thought was actually a pretty good match between the both of them. They worked well together. Matter of fact, it was almost like you'd seen a good match between the two of them down in NXT a while back, and that's kind of how it came off in this one. It came off as a really good match to go along with it, and we'll see how they play off of everything down here in the near future with that. If they continue on with a longer Alexa Bliss Bayley feud, or if it goes elsewhere where they branch off between each other. So we'll see how they end up playing off of everything on that sense of it. So this brings us to the House of Horrors match. I have a like and dislike about this match. I liked how they did things with the House of Horrors. The one downside is the suspension of disbelief. You're supposed to feel like they should be in San Jose for this. and then they go back to the arena. But it's pitch black, and well, we live in I live in Arizona, so it's about the same time as it would be in San Jose at that point, and it's still daylight here, but it's pitch black for the House of Horrors match. So suspension of disbelief was kind of thrown out the window. So I overlooked that. I overlooked that aspect of it. I wanted to see how this match went. I liked the concept of the house itself. I liked the concepts and everything that they had inside the house itself. The creepy factor was there. I like horror movies to begin with, so especially the cheesy ones. The big downside to this one, outside of until they got to the kitchen, it felt like just a wrestling match inside of the house. Like just, and by that I mean like just a basic brawl between the two of them. Now the stuff that they had in some of the rooms, like the baby dolls and everything, and some of them getting like having stabbed with scissors or being hanged with hooks and everything to go along with it. I like those little touches that they put inside the house. But the fighting, the action inside of the house itself felt very basic until they got to the kitchen where where you had like different types of weapons, and of course Randy Orton gets a refrigerator thrown on him to go along with it. And then they decided to go, that's when Bray leaving Randy inside the House of Horrors. But nothing really happens to the House of Horrors outside of the blue light turning to a red light to the place. Like you wanted them to do a little bit more of this. I felt like you wanted them to do a little bit more with this one. Either make it perceive that he is leaving Randy to just like into what is it? I guess what you would assume to be to die or something like that, like you would see in most horror movies, to go along with that, only to have Randy come back to go along with it. But they didn't really do much of it with the outside of the house. It was all inside the house. They didn't really do anything on the outside of everything. And I felt like there was more they could have done with this. I liked certain aspects of the House of Horrors. I like the opening where, though as weird as it is for a limo to pull up to this, I liked it. I like the aspect of it. It's like, because you could tell right off of the bat, it's like, okay, that's a limo. I'm liking what I'm initially seeing. I liked some of the rooms that they had in there. I felt the fighting itself was very basic to go along with it, and it wasn't like they used anything really unique outside of the refrigerator and what they had done inside of the kitchen with everything to go along with it. They needed to go further with this, and they didn't. That's my problem with this. They needed to go a little bit further with this one, but they didn't go there with it. And that's, like I said, the biggest problem with this one, to go along with everything. And you could tell they lost the crowd as well. The crowd, like I said, I liked certain portions of it. I disliked other portions of it. That's why I'm kind of giving it I liked it. Because like I liked all that final deletion stuff and everything in that sense, but I didn't like it. It's like they could have done so much more with it, and they didn't go there. Makes you worry how far they're gonna really let Matt go if they decide to go with this the broken thing on WWE television to go along with it. But you could tell they lost the crowd completely at this point in time, because when they cut back to the announcers, you could audibly hear that crowd just completely crapping on this. I liked it, but didn't like it at the same time. I'm kind of in the middle on it to go along with it, because, like I said, there was good portions to it, but there were bad portions to it, and you could tell with the crowd that they lost it. And you had to feel for Samoa Joe and Seth Rollins, because this match wasn't over with yet, but they had to go out there and do their match next. And Seth Rollins and Samoa Joe, they put on a good match. They did put on a good match, but they couldn't get the crowd back into it yet. And that was the main focal points, that they didn't really get the crowd back into it throughout the rest of the night. To go along with everything, with maybe the exception of the main event. Seth Rollins, like I said, they played up the knee injury again like they had done at WrestleMania. So they're going to play off. I think they're going to play off of that as much as they possibly can until they decide not to do it anymore. I don't know in the sense of it, but it makes you feel like, oh, he's never going to heal from this knee injury. Just everybody go for his knee. Just go for it. That's how it's going to be. And the finish had it with Samoa Joe having them in the Coquina Clutch after a decent comeback from Seth Rollins, even getting the Falcon's Arrow performed to Samoa Joe, which I just like the move itself. I feel like that should be his finisher. Shouldn't be the that knee or whatever he's going with. It's not going to be the pedigree. It's going to be that Rainmaker like knee that they have now for him. That Falcon's Arrow, I just would prefer that to be the finisher in every way. But Joe had Seth Rollins in the Coquina Clutch, which he reverses into a roll-up. And, yeah, that's how he gets the victory. He got it by roll-ups. So, yeah, that's definitely not a feud ender. They're going to keep this one going. Maybe they're going to have a stipulation match or something at Extreme Rules. We'll see how they play that one off. But otherwise, good match between the two of them. It was a rather enjoyable one. So this brings us to the second portion of the House of Horrors, which the limo drives up, because that was the ending to the beginning. It was Bray Wyatt just gets inside the limo, goes back to the arena, says, "Driver, take me to the arena," and he starts singing, "I've got the whole world in my hands," as he leaves. I was kind of expecting Randy Orton to be the driver of the actual limo. I'm kind of glad that wasn't the case. The weird aspect is that he gets a full entrance. I love the fact that Bray Wyatt sold everything. He sold everything. Like, he did have the lantern in there, but he comes out kind of stumbling around to the entrance itself. Weird that he gets like a full entrance and everything, but I'm glad he ended up selling everything to go along with it. So he wasn't just like walking to the ring normally. He kind of stumbled around a bit to actually enter the arena. But lo and behold, Randy Orton was right behind him. As the lights went out, and you could tell that was what was going to be the case when the lights didn't come back on really quickly. It's like, okay, Randy's going to be right behind him. And lo and behold, when the lights come back, there's Randy Orton with a steel chair. I actually liked a lot of the in-ring stuff. It didn't go for too terribly long, probably about another 5-6 minutes. Orton kind of beating down Bray as much as he can with a chair and everything in that sense, kind of back and forth between the two of them. It looked like Bray was going to hit him with his Sister Abigail, but it gets countered into an RKO. And then lo and behold, the Bollywood Boys show up. And, oh man, this, like I said, I kind of like the in-ring stuff. I know some people might not like the in-ring stuff to go along with it, but lo and behold, the Bollywood Boys show up, and Jinder Mahal shows up after they get dispatched. And Jinder Mahal helps out Bray Wyatt, winning the match after a couple shots with the WWE title. And then a Sister Abigail. I kind of liked the in-ring. I thought it was good. I liked the aspect of Randy kind of showing up right behind Bray as he gets into the arena with everything. Though it leads you to believe, it's like, wait a minute, how did Randy get back to the arena? The car he came in, Bray took. Did he call an Uber? I don't know. At least that's the one aspect of it that they lead out there. The great thing would have been, and we were talking about this in the live reactions with me and Daniel, if they really just like cut out all suspension of disbelief, and they had the house be like a portal to the arena or something like that, would have been great too. Like, you throw them through the door and then all of a sudden they just show up on the entrance ramp. I thought that would have been great, but they went this way about it. They went that way with it, and I liked and disliked that beginning. The end I was okay with as well. I did like it a little bit, but like I said, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth because the crowd, you felt like they could have done so much more with it, but it felt so basic in the end, and it just didn't come off all that well. So this leads us to the main event of the night, which was Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns. I'll give him credit for this one. They actually had Roman sell the injuries. That he was still injured from the beatdown that Braun gave him a couple weeks ago. And they had him sell it. And he sold it quite well, too. No, he did hit his typical fair moves, but he always felt like it's like, okay, you kind of saw on his face, it's like he got hurt on each time he was doing something. To Braun Strowman, as Strowman kind of dominates most of the match, and like Roman gets flurries of offense here and there. I liked what they did with this. Like, they had Roman sell the injuries. They had him forced to fight back, though. It's like, this is supposed to garner sympathy for Roman, and you're just getting thank you Strowman chants throughout the entire night. As Strowman is the babyface, though technically he isn't. A little bit weird on that one. Actually, not a little bit weird when you're going against Roman Reigns for that aspect of it. I don't, like I said, I've always said I personally don't dislike Roman Reigns, but a lot of people do, to go along with everything. So you were getting lots of like cheers whenever Strowman was on the offense, and thank you Strowman chants and everything. It does lead to Roman hitting a spear. Of course, that wasn't going to finish that wasn't going to actually finish the match. But so you get the 1-2 and the kick out, which led to Roman going for not another spear, but for like another Superman punch, which got caught, and he got hit with the first running power slam, which he kicks out of, and then then Strowman immediately delivers another one to finish off the match and win the match clean, to go along with it. And then after the match happened, and by after the match, I mean he grabs the steel stairs or the aluminum chairs, or the aluminum stairs. That's what we'll go with. The aluminum stairs. He puts the stairs into the ring. He picks up Strowman, or Strowman just picks up Roman and then just drops him onto the stairs, denting them and everything in that sense. And then Strowman picks it up and rams it right into his gut, and that's how they go. That's how they kind of go off the air. Is that he's kind of done with it. He's kind of done with him. Like Roman's in the ring, writhing in pain, spitting up blood. He's trying to be the valiant babyface, though. It's like you got to play off the aspects. It's like, do the EMTs even like Roman Reigns either? Because everybody knows there's a set of EMTs at every event. Wouldn't they be out there a lot quicker? Like, it took them a good like 10 minutes to get out, or I wouldn't say 10 minutes, it was like 5 minutes, but still, it took them a long time to get out there in the terms of the EMTs, while they had just referees and agents out there trying to help out Roman. And of course he's refusing and trying to walk and everything to go along with it, as that's how they pretty much fade out, is that he is he's trying to walk out on his own power and trying to be valiant on that one. As I have to turn off my alarm. I had set an alarm. Sorry about that one. But if you... I don't know how many people actually watched afterwards and went to the Raw talk. Afterwards, they continued on with it where he goes backstage. And I don't know if WWE couldn't help themselves on this one or anything. Like, you have Roman walking backstage like he's coughing up more blood. He's like even like... He spit out blood onto the wall and everything. He walks over to the EMT, and all of a sudden you just hear in the background, and I was calling for it at one point, that you would just hear it out of nowhere. It's like, I'm not done with you yet! And Strowman just barges in as he gets sidestepped by Roman and takes out the door of the EMT and runs into some boxes. I don't know if they couldn't help themselves, or trying to get some heat back onto Roman or something to go along with it, as Roman kind of chases Strowman away really quick a little bit afterwards, and going back to being injured to go along with it. I don't know what they were trying for there. They had it perfect on the pay-per-view itself, so if you didn't watch that, ignore it, I guess, because they had it perfect on the pay-per-view, because Strowman comes off looking like a monster. Comes off looking like a threat, a big threat to everyone, and he goes over clean on Roman, which would say that they're going to have another match somewhere down the line here to go along with it. So we'll see when they actually do that. for both of those guys on that side of everything, but also plays off of, you know, like, are they going to have Braun and Brock Lesnar? You would assume that would be the case now, that they would be doing this, that they're building Braun Strowman up for a Brock Lesnar match at this time, whether it be at the pay-per-view in July, whether it be the pay-per-view in July or SummerSlam, that match ends out happening, which I'll talk about that one in a different video, because the Raw pay-per-view in July, the name of it, and maybe I'll talk about it on the Raw review or something like that, but I won't talk about it here. So yeah, overall, Payback wasn't a bad event. It felt like it did feel like a decent episode of Monday Night Raw. It came off as a decent pay-per-view. The House of Horrors match, I can get why people didn't like it. I liked certain aspects of it. Then again, I like horror movies, so what can you say? What can you say on that one? I just felt like I knocked it for things that I didn't like. I felt like they could have gone further with that House of Horrors portion in there, or at least further than what they did. But there were there were good things about the House of Horrors, and I thought it came off decent. But they could have done so much better, because like that aspect of Bray leaving Randy in there and then just getting in the limo and leaving, kind of as a letdown. Felt like they could have gone more with it. Whether the place would have been on fire or blown up or something more to make it a symbol as like, oh, Randy's left there to basically burn or die, or however they would have wanted to play it off. Only to have Randy come back inside of the arena and everything to go along with it. Which that is what they did. They left him in there, but you didn't see like a full set of danger for Randy Orton after the facet of being left in the house. Even though, yes, he had a refrigerator fall on him. I get it. That would hurt a lot of people. I guess they instead of trying to play it off as different, they tried to play it off as subtly realistic, and they needed to go a little bit more over the top on that one. They really needed to go a little bit more over the top on the House of Horrors, but they had some decent stuff inside of it to go along with it. So with that being said, guys, that is my review for WWE Payback. I thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great day.